thank you very much for coming to our session. And hi everyone who is watching us online, because I know there's a streaming for some people who couldn't join us today. So we will start with a quick intro. It's one of my favorite slides in the presentation. Please meet Rodrigo and his cat Chloe. Rodrigo is a full stack developer. He's got tons of experience in Drupal. He has given talks on code quality, testing, peer reviews, Composer. You can find him as Rodrigo Aguilera on Drupal.org.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here after holding on to my ticket for 2 years. It's like a rock concert. So please meet Kate and her cat, Rizik. Kate is the tech lead at System Seed. She's part of the team that won Dries Plus Award for the Decoupled website. And you can find her on Drupal.org as Kalabro. So we are work for System Seed. It's a digital agency that is focused on social impact. We work for NGOs such as UNICEF, MSF, and also we are proud of the work we do and how we do it. That's why we are today, and thanks to System Seed for allowing us to be here today. They help a lot. And yeah, the subject of today is progressively decoupling. At System Seed, we have a lot of experience with fully decoupling. There is a talk from 2019 about the subject if you're interested in fully decoupling. But we believe there is complexity that comes with fully decoupling. So if for your project, you want to focus on one interactive part or two, and leave the rest to Drupal, like routing, authentication, SEO meta tags, stuff like that, then decoupling progressively might be your thing. It's kind of a budget decision also. One clarification, we are aware that there is initiative on Drupal core about decoupling some parts of it, but now we are not gonna talk about those. Today we wanna focus on the tools that are available today so you can decouple today. But we believe this is a great initiative. It's gonna standardize the way things are decoupled in Drupal, and we hope a great future, or maybe even collaborate at one point with it. So today we're gonna talk about one project, Equip. It has two parts that both are decoupled: the assessment tool that Kate is going to talk about and the learning part of it. So yeah, without further ado, let me hand it over to Kate.
Thanks, Rodrigo. I'm honored to represent the development team behind the Equip project today. It's not just us who built this. Equip stands for Ensuring Quality and Psychological Support. It's a project of the World Health Organization that provides training and digital materials to support training and assessment for mental health specialists, especially in regions there is huge shortage of professional specialists in psychology. So it all started before COVID, when we were asked to build a tablet application to replace some paper-based process for training and assessment mental health specialists. Because of COVID, we had to take it a step further and put in place a learning management system so that organizations can train mental health specialists and evaluate their skills remotely. So today, Equip is a public website, an app supported across different devices, and a learning management system, all powered by one Drupal installation. So in the next half an hour or so, we will share our learnings from this project and some practical examples. But before we jump into technical details, I wanted to walk you through a quick video tour so you can get a feel of the project. So Equip is a Drupal-powered website. It has some common website elements like homepage, menu, login form. At the core of the project is a competency assessment tool, which is a progressively decoupled application. It supports multiple teams. Each team can has its own trainings. As a trainer, I have access to training dashboard. I have access to my trainees. I can see training results visualized in different formats. I can download training results, etc. When it comes to the assessment process itself, it's basically a very big form with a lot of checkboxes. Similar to our Drupal permissions page, but much more sophisticated. Everything on this screen is fully configurable in Drupal on content level and fully translatable. So now the video will switch to Spanish version of the website and everything will be in Spanish. The app can work completely offline. Now I will switch off my Wi-Fi on the video and I can proceed through the assessment process without any interruptions. When the app goes back online, it will automatically sync all necessary data and I can continue working with the app without any issues. In addition to the app itself, we have a clean admin dashboard for administrators to perform some common operations. Just opening it in the video. So here, administrators can manage the assessment form, trainings, trainees, they can invite users, they can configure translations, etc. Everything in this one place. Finally, the app comes with the demo mode. For those who just learned the interface and are not ready to perform real assessments yet, it's actually the same form, but you don't need to submit any results on this page. It's just a demo interface. Yeah, and that was it. Everything is smooth and quick. I didn't speed up this video, but don't worry if you didn't didn't get all the details, because now I will slow down and walk through this step by step. So let me start with technical architecture of this project. As you already know, it's a common Drupal website powered by one Drupal installation, extended by a handful of contrib modules like group, progressive web app, etc., and further extended by our custom modules that we develop following common Drupal practices. For example, equip admin UI obviously enhances admin UI. One module in this list is special though. It's equip assessment. This module carries on a progressively decoupled React application with it, and today we will talk a lot about this one. If we look at the code base of the project, it's half in PHP, which is in our case Drupal, and around 30% is JavaScript, which is in our case React. Both these tools provide huge ecosystems of modules, plugins, best practices that we can use to solve some common problems. Interestingly, although the approach we used is called progressive decoupling, we didn't decouple anything from anything. In fact, we integrated these two technologies, these two words together. There is no one right way, at least for now, to integrate React and Drupal. So we will share how we did this for Equip, to inspire you maybe, explore this, and to learn from you during Q&A session. So let's get started. So the very first question we need to solve is how to actually make React work inside a common Drupal installation. I've got very clean Drupal here. I want to have my React there. So it's not very complicated. First thing you need to have is a so-called React root element that will serve as a place for React to mount. To do so, we basically need an empty div with a fixed ID. We have a controller in Drupal that just returns empty div, and we give a fixed ID React app. So this is our React root. But if we render this now, we will still see something like this. There's nothing apart from empty div that we added. So next step is to add our JavaScript on the same page. In our case, we built JavaScript, all libraries, and our custom code using Webpack. But don't worry, I will not show you our Webpack config. It doesn't really matter how we built our JavaScript. The idea is that we then configure it as a Drupal library and they attach this library using Drupal render arrays. So now we have our JavaScript. We also need some data to render inside our application. For example, list of training names. This is how we can expose data to React app. This is a simplified example, but the idea is the following. You prepare the data, you load it using Drupal API, for example, load entities, and then you attach this data to our empty div array using data property. So I created data application property here, and I encode our data array using JSON encode. As simple as that. So now we have everything to render our app, so let's do that. This is a simple but working React application from Drupal. So in the first two lines, we just import a common React library. Then we have a very simple app component that just renders a heading, h1. Then we find our root element by the ID that we created in Drupal, React root. We parse data from data attribute that we also passed in Drupal. And finally, on the very last line, we mount React into our React component into our React in our div root element. So let's give it a try. That worked. So at this stage, we can start common React front-end development process. We can break down our interface in components. We can style them, we can install third-party libraries that we need to make our UI interactive, etc. So eventually, we will get something like this. The next challenge we had is how we make this interface translatable. For example, how we can build something like this. This is the same form, but in Arabic. You probably already know that Drupal comes with very powerful internalization tools. So we leveraged all of them. We also extended them by a couple of contrib modules, and basically the admin part of the work was done. One important note about this data attribute, the way how we load data. If we do it ourselves, then we need to make sure we load content in correct language. For example, here in this sidebar, we have competency tools, competency names, which are actually taxonomy terms in Drupal. And if we load them ourselves, we just need to add one line of code to make sure we load it in a correct language. So it's more or less clear with content, but what about interface strings like close, submit, something like this? Again, Drupal comes with a very nice and powerful yet simple API in JavaScript, Drupal T. Very similar to what we have in PHP T function, but applicable in JavaScript code. It works in a similar way. You just pass a string and it returns a translation. Under the hood, Drupal parses our JavaScript files, finds all these strings and makes them available for translation in normal Drupal interface. Just don't forget to clear cache. This approach can be used with any JavaScript framework. It's just a global function available anywhere in JavaScript code. And there are also a couple of other helpers that can be useful: format plural, URL. And let's have a look at the React component that uses this API. Here we have a home link component that can return translatable home link. It uses Drupal URL to build correct path to the home page. For example, if we have it in Spanish, it will add Spanish prefix to the URL. And we use Drupal T to return to get the translated version of the go to homepage string. Very simple and very powerful. We actually started with some React-based internalization frameworks, but we migrated to Drupal T because it's much more powerful. Cool, so we have our application translated. The next step is to make it auto-sync and auto-save data so that trainer can focus on the work and don't worry about the app. Again, it starts with Drupal. There are many ways in Drupal to expose data via API. We use REST API. REST API plugins are very easy to create and use, especially when your application is inside Drupal, so the authentication process becomes trivial with cookie authentication. So we created a handful of API endpoints that expose data or consume data, and our React application knows how and when to call those API endpoints. I will not go into details of that, but I will just mention on a high level how it works. So our React application makes API calls every 10 seconds to check for updates. For example, when we stay on a training list and there's some new training available for a user, or existing training was removed or renamed, user will get this update on the screen without any extra actions. We call it background updates. React will also perform some API calls when user makes some explicit action. For example, they click submit button or go to a different application screen. There are a few other conditions that trigger API synchronization, but we will talk about them later. It's implemented in our case using Redux family of tools. Now, if you have never heard of Redux, don't worry, it doesn't really matter what exactly is used here. The idea is that we use some common libraries and approaches that are available in the front-end ecosystem. For example, with Redux family of tools, we were able to get some ready-to-go plugins to make our app persist in the local storage, to sync data between tabs, etc. If I run the application with Redux development tools opened, you can see that while I'm performing some actions in the app, there is a corresponding Redux action, and the app triggers API calls. Sometimes the app can change UI based on those actions. With tools like this, we were able to build a reliable, stable application for quite sophisticated user flows, and it can tolerate unstable internet connection. Not just unstable, it can work completely offline. So let me show you this bit as well. To make app work offline, we need two things. First of all, we need sources, JavaScript, CSS, images that are used by your app. And then we need data that we will render inside our application. For the first part, we use Drupal module, Progressive Web Applications. It takes care of installing Service Worker and caching necessary files in browser cache storage. For the second part, you already know that we expose data in data attribute. To make it work offline, we persist this data in local storage. This is an example of quite data-heavy setup of the app. We have 8 megabytes of data installed on the device. In our case, it's primarily local storage and cache storage, but you can see that there are many different options here. And now the app can work completely offline. The only problem, it will not know if it's online or offline. And for example, it can trigger some API request, it will fail, and error will be displayed to the user. To solve this, we installed a small utility, React Detect Offline. On offline event, we pause all API requests, and on online event, we immediately trigger synchronization and let Redux figure out the data. That's one way to implement offline, but there are other ways. For example, AnuLMS uses a different offline strategy, so it's time for me to hand over to Rodrigo for the second part of our presentation.
Thank you, thank you. So, I'm gonna talk about Anu. In Equip, Anu serves as documentation for this assessment tool, the checkboxes and everything, and also gives courses on mental health, people who want to learn skills on how to help others for mental health for the WHO. So it's an open source system. We are very focused on the learner experience, the user experience. So we make it super easy for them to go from one course to the other. It also, the features that we implement on it, they all come from the client. We don't come up with features up front of what we are gonna need in Anu LMS. So yeah. This is a little bit of how it looks on Equip. It has courses, little buttons on how you can make the courses available offline. You go into a course, and yeah, on the left you have modules. This will be a lesson. You can go to the next lesson. Kind of basic stuff. So it's all also multilingual, thanks to the same strategy that we use in Equip. We use Drupal T. And yeah, there is, when you build an LMS, you say, yeah, I'm gonna build a distribution, a Drupal profile, but we use Anu LMS in many projects, so we wanna make it a module. So you have your normal Drupal site, and then you add the LMS part of it. That's one advantage. When you install it, it comes with 3 content types: the course, the courses pages and lessons, and a bunch of paragraphs. So yeah, that's what you get when you install Anu LMS. And the first challenge is how to normalize the data that we have in Drupal. There is GraphQL, there is JSON API, but we wanted to make it very easy for front-end developers. So we came up with this module, the REST Entity Recursive, that just takes the relationships between the Drupal entities that a front-end developer doesn't need to know about, and they are in the same object, so they have them available. It's pretty easy for them. So once we have that data, we render it as a data attribute, and this has the advantage that Drupal can cache it. It's kind of a big blob, but Drupal can cache render arrays, so this will be cached and changed whenever any of the Drupal entities is gonna change. So the strategies for getting data from Drupal and to Drupal, the data attribute to get data from Drupal that I showed. We are gonna need HTTP endpoints whenever we need data from Drupal or to save data in Drupal. And there is other valid strategies, for example, like getting a JavaScript global object where your data lives. React can consume that also. So paragraphs. We love the data modeling tools that Drupal has. One of them is paragraphs, and we as developers feel very natural to add Drupal fields, and then those become properties in your JavaScript component. Not only for developers, but also for content editors, makes sense to have some paragraph that they add fields to, and then it renders like a logical unit for them. Here is the example of an MP3 file with just a title that is on the backend is a paragraph. So offline capabilities on Anu. A bit different from Equip. So we want to make the URLs available offline. We offer that to the user. They can say, no, I don't want it offline. They can change their minds and then make it offline available offline, with and without audio, because audio files can become very big, and we are mindful for people's devices and data plans and bandwidth, the storage that they might have in those devices. So we want to offer those options for offline use. So yeah, in the other part of Equip, we kind of have actions, and then those actions are sent to Drupal whenever it's available online again. Here we just want to make the URLs, the courses URLs, the MP3 files. And we started with the same strategy that the PWA module. You request some URL and then it's saved on the cache storage of the browser. But we had some challenges. Like, for example, when an MP3 file is requested by the browser, only the first chunk is then stored in cache. So luckily, we have this Google library, front-end library called Workbox that can take care of it transparently. When you request an MP3 file through it, it will download it completely. When you wanna like jump to a second in your MP3 file and you're offline, the library will handle it automatically. So in the 2.5 version of Anu, we're gonna start using Workbox. It's very recent, but we also noticed that the PWA module is gonna move to Workbox, so it's kind of the future when you wanna do progressive web applications or offline capabilities for your app. It's kind of the future. So yeah, I just wanted to mention the quizzes part of Anu LMS is based on endpoints because it's interactive, has many kinds of questions. But yeah, when the user submits an answer, we want to store that in Drupal, and we want to also give feedback to the user in case they got some answers wrong. They can self-assess themselves. Depends on how it's configured. If you wanna take the test many times, or if you just allow them to take the test once. Everything is configurable in Anu. So the theming part. In your progressive decoupled application, you can have a very simple approach. In React, you output some markup with some classes, and your global CSS can take care of it. But you might be missing out on front-end libraries and capabilities that come with some styling and very nice features. In our case, it's Material UI, but you start using Material UI on your application, and then the Drupal theme might look weird. And our solution to that is just use Material also on the Drupal site. So the whole application, the whole site looks even in the same style, material-based Drupal theme. And yeah, for Bootstrap, there is other libraries if you wanna, and for other styling if you wanna check them out. So in the Drupal world, we are very used to override things, and when you come to React, it's like, how do I do this? Our strategy is to replace certain files that come with Anu LMS. Because of that, we try to divide Anu LMS in small files that can be overridden. Ket said that we are not going to show Webpack configuration, but here it is. It's kind of simple. There is a custom module called SBS Sessions that is going to build its own JavaScript. And it's going to override some namespaces. So whenever the original file is going to be built by Webpack, it's going to be replaced by the custom file. It's kind of easy once you get used to it. And of course, since we are going to build new libraries for Anu, we need to replace them with a hook info alter for the libraries. Yeah, not very related to Decoupled, but since it's a contrib module that other modules can override, we also have on the PHP side, you can override that data. And we want to run away from Drupal hooks. We use Symfony events. We think is way more modern. So current challenges. In System Seed, we use Anu LMS quite a lot, but it's open source. We want everyone to enjoy. We want to give instructions to other developers on how to use it with DDEV, with Lando. We're working on it. We have tests, Drupal tests, to ensure that the module can be installed, but it's a lot of JavaScript that we want to run in the browser. So we are still figuring out how we want to do end-to-end tests. We like Codeception, and we use it, but we see that the community is using Nightwatch. So it's something that we are considering, and we would like your input if you have some on it. And yeah, some examples that I saw today, they are not in documentation yet, so we want to expand that and make it very friendly for other developers. And we're gonna be working on it this week, and please approach us if you have some questions and we can show Anu, and please try it. And now we are getting close to the end, and let me give the microphone to Kate again.
Thanks, Rodrigo, for Webpack config. All right, how are you? Are you convinced to use progressive web applications? Give it a try. Yeah, one person. Well done. All right, I've got a couple more slides to convince you before we finish for today. So one thing that we forgot to mention is that actually the foundation of the Equip project was built in 2020. The app was very well received by trial users. And since then we added new features. The app has grown, expanded in multiple regions. We covered it by automated tests. We implemented monitoring so that we could easily and safely upgrade Drupal, React, etc. And since then, we actually didn't have any major refactorings or architectural changes to the project. So we are very happy about this project and how it's evolved. For us, it's a clear success. So let me share a few takeaways from this successful progressively decoupled project. First of all, as you've seen, with help of a front-end framework, Drupal is capable to handle very complex UI projects. But complex UI projects, complex software in general, doesn't have to be complicated or overcomplicated by some crazy cutting-edge buzzwords. We took a simple and pragmatic approach, and it worked very well in the long run. Progressive decoupling is a stable, battle-proven approach. It's very widely adopted outside of Drupal community. For example, frameworks like Laravel and Ruby on Rails have very similar approach to integrate with JavaScript. In those communities, this approach is called monolith, as opposed to API-first approach when you have microservices. Of course, progressive decoupling isn't for everything. You've seen that on Equip, we have a lot of parts of the website that are just stock Drupal. This week, there will be 2 more sessions on Decoupled, tomorrow and on Thursday. So I'm pretty sure this topic will be covered well. Stay tuned. If you have never worked with progressive decoupled or you want to dive deeper into the topic, please join us to contribute to Anna this week. Our slides, as well as some extra resources, technical and non-technical, are available at systemc.com DDD 2022. Thank you very much. Your questions. We can deliver this.
I'm gonna throw it to you if no one asks.
We can play like this.
So yeah, time for questions.
Yay.
So I got a couple questions, but I can throw it away. We'll see. First, you're not using JSON API, but the rest, I don't know what is it called, but yeah, a couple words about that, maybe.
Well, is REST APIs is something that it's already in core. I'm not sure if JSON API was in core by the time we started, but yeah, I mean, and yeah, REST entity recursive only extends the REST mechanism that exists in core for normalizing, and it just takes the relationship, the entity what's the name of the field? Entity reference, thank you. Entity reference, and extends that to contain all the data. It's very dummy module actually.
Yeah, but so if you were to choose between REST and JSON API today, would you still use REST, or would you choose JSON
I
API?
think we will look into modern. I mean, especially when you have front-end tools that integrate already with JSON API. We will consider JSON API because with REST we have to write our own kind of mapping between the Drupal layer and the front-end layer. So yeah.
Okay.
And maybe we even convert annual MS to JSON API.
There's one thing that we will need to resolve is that, let's say you have a node with ID 1. When you request it with JSON API, you will need to build a quite sophisticated request to pull. Let's say we have 5 paragraphs attached to this node, and then each paragraph can also refer to a media file, and media files, it happened, have some other fields, and they may have more references. So with REST entity recursive, we make one request and it just exposes everything. Of course, a warning that it can kill your performance if your entities go crazy, but it's very simple, easy to use. You just make a request and get everything. And then front-end developers, they can't anymore complain, I don't have this data, you have everything.
Okay, thanks for the insights.
You first? Oh, okay. What was the main factor for choosing progressive decoupling instead of fully decoupled? Because it looks like an application that could well suit like an Angular PWA or something. So I was wondering, why did you choose progressive here? What was the main factor for that?
Well, kind of budget. Like we want to dedicate most of the budget to the interactive part, and we didn't want to bother about all those problems. We have Drupal pages, we have Drupal menus, authentication. We think those, especially at the beginning of the project, they take a lot of time to figure out how you're gonna do them. In this case, we could start with the part that the client was caring the most, and Drupal was already there. So, no, I think I hope you agree.
And we didn't demo a lot of functionality in Equip that is just Drupal functionality, different modules, from reports, etc. So I would say it's 80% powered by Drupal and 20% powered by React. But this React part, of course, it's very important.
Yeah, it's probably nice for the editors that they just have an edit button on the page itself and stuff like that. So, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we have other projects that are fully decoupled. In those projects, we really think it's justified because they have other apps, different websites that consume the same. Those are the cases. Next.
Yeah, so thanks for the talk. I was wondering, Kate, you mentioned that you've used the PWA module. Was it flexible and configurable enough for you?
So surprisingly, for Equip, we use stock installation. Just those configurations that are available were enough for us. For Anu, as Rodrigo mentioned, we had to extend it a little bit. We patched it to inject workbox because we needed some more advanced media files support. But as far as I know, PWA module goes into the same direction, so it should be soon ready.
I know it's on the road.
Yeah, it served our purpose very well.
Yeah. Okay, and so the like the syncing when you've been offline and you want to like resync the data to your backend, that is bypassing the service worker, right? It just React calling the API directly.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I understand. Thanks.
Over there.
No one is dead. Thanks for the talk. I just have a question about preview, because that's something that we are very often asked to implement. And how do you do that?
Thank you for the question. It's something that I removed from the talk at one point. So it's one of the advantages of going progressively decoupled, because when you hit the preview, the JavaScript is loaded and all the Drupal data, and yeah, it's just there. It works. I mean, when you have to do previews in fully decoupled websites, it's a bit more complicated. I mean, in progressive is 1 point for progressive, you know, doing previews. I don't know if you came with any challenges doing previews with progressively decoupled apps, or
No, I'm just curious because it's often a problem, and
Yeah,
with
it
I'm
is.
very hyped by the paragraph and Drupal.tn preview
Yeah.
working, just with your setup, so
progressively
that's
everything
great.
works. Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, one more.
Yeah, I wondered what kind of IDE do you use? From experience that I have using JavaScript and Drupal, PHP Storm or the Microsoft one, how do you go about that?
I'm gonna answer shortly. I use Vim. No, but I installed the Visual Studio Code last week, and Kate can answer also. No, I don't have facilities.
It's really cool that Rodrigo uses. I think he's the only one in our company who uses Vim, and I'm jealous. I use PHP Storm, and it works well with JavaScript and PHP Storm, but you need to fine tune it a little bit. There's also option. I think you mentioned VC Code as another option. I prefer PHP Storm more because most of us are full stack developers, so we kind of at the same time we touch PHP, we touch JavaScript, we see how it works together. So I want to have everything. PHP Storm works well, but as you can see, you can even go with Vim.
Next session for Drupal, please. Vim. Okay. Ah, you had two. Go, yeah.
I'm gonna try and read.
Yeah, we still have time. And big throw. Woohoo! Oh. Oops.
Okay. So I was wondering if you had any strategy in place for the performance aspect of loading React on every page. So when when we did progressive decoupling, I had some issues, and we had to think about not to bust the cache, the navigator cache on every page. So the JavaScript bundle isn't downloaded every time. So I don't know if you have some words about that.
I think we do the same. It's kind of this line with vendors. We have one file with all the vendors. I think in one custom project, we had different vendors for different parts of the applications that they were very different. Well, they say React and everything, but yeah, it's just one asset that is loaded on every page. That's kind of big, but is cached by the browser. I don't know anything more sophisticated.
Okay. Well, it does satisfy me that
Yeah.
you don't have anything more to say. So okay.
Glad to hear it.
And I could still
Yeah.
have another question, but it's more like a detailed question, you know.
Sure.
You're using data attributes like every time, but I'm using Drupal settings like every time for those cases. So I don't know what were your what's your thinking about that.
Yeah, it's kind of controversial starting with the name Drupal settings. It's like we're using something that is used for settings, for data. So we kind of reserve the Drupal settings object for its use within Drupal when we don't want to deliver data in it. No, I think that's our take. But we did it in the past. We did that, and we don't want to do it anymore. And yeah, the data attribute allows us to cast, to do some things like that.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Hi. So during your talk at the beginning, you had an example with a basic page, and inside you included the React component. I just wanted to know how you actually managed to do that. Is it just a simple block and attach library into it?
So in our case, we just created a new route with page hello React, and that route returned, it had its own title, but it also returned an empty div. And then when I visit this page in my browser, drupal.localhost/hello-react, I have this route in place. That's how I add it. But for example, there are approaches when you create dynamic widgets that can be configurable as Drupal blocks or even paragraphs inside your content. In this case, it can be more dynamic. You can invent some way to generate IDs, and then you can do some magic on React side to inject. So you have your React installed attached to the page only once, but you can render mini Reacts in multiple places on your page.
So yeah, that's nothing more to say. Yay! It's fun.
About the offline storage part, did you encounter some limitations on the amount of storage there was available in the browsers, and what libraries did you use to? Did you use, for example, local storage or IndexedDB or something else? It's not a Drupal question.
There's no IndexedDB stuff. That's a policy by the browsers, and I think right now is super increased. Like you can use up until 80% of the whole storage of the device. But when we started, it was more reduced, and also this application is deployed in Africa, where people don't have such fancy devices, so we have to be mindful for that. And I think Workbox has, Workbox is many libraries. It's not like this super library. Has a part that manages local storage, so you can set your own policies, like, hey, don't occupy the whole space of the device and stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly. In Workbox, you can specify expiration date for your pages that you cache. You can provide some strategy. For example, if I need to cache this new page now, I first will remove some older page from cache or something like this. In general, when we started exploring the limitations of the storage, when we needed to implement MP3 audio support, it turned out that the quota has grown significantly, so we were in a good state.
Yeah, I mean, the browser vendors are already realizing that this is kind of the way many developers are gonna deliver their applications, so that's very nice.
Okay, what is it called? Workbox?
Workbox, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Didn't know that, thanks.
By Google. Yeah. Promo, free promo. Okay, I think we can leave it here. Thank you all for coming. It's been great.
Well done.